Welcome to Season 4 of You're Not Alone with Townsend. On this podcast, I'll be sitting down with guests from all over the world to discuss everything under the umbrella of mental health, diagnoses, sharing stories of resilience, medical advice, and even getting some tips and tricks from licensed counselors. The goal of this podcast is to teach us how to understand others, ourselves, and help spread love and light, one episode at a time. Please make sure to like and follow this podcast, and if you'd like to see the videos of these conversations, hop on over to my YouTube channel, TownsendTmusic YouTube, where you can find the podcast and my latest music. This podcast is run solely by supporters and listeners just like you. So if you'd like to help keep this podcast and project going, please consider hopping on patreon.com/TownsendTmusic to be part of the team. You'll also find extra content and questions with each and every guest. Let's hop in. What is up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of You're Not Alone with Townsend. Super excited about this one. We're going to be chit-chatting about the topic of bipolar, which I've actually had a lot of guests message me wanting to know a little bit more. So when I saw Wes's stories on TikTok, I had to message because it's just something I love when people have awareness and they're able to explain things a little bit better for people. So Wes, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. It means so much. Now, you were telling me earlier you're from North Carolina, yeah?
Yes.
God, that's a beautiful state.
Yeah, I love it here. I've been here about 12 years now.
Okay. Have you ever made the trek down to Arkansas?
I have not been to Arkansas, no. Mostly just up and down the East Coast.
Oh, okay. Very good. Yeah, well, Arkansas is a good one. You should add it to your list.
I may have to.
I know. Now you do. Now I've given you a reason to have to come to Arkansas. Okay, so Wes, I saw your stories on social media, like I said, and I just love how open you are, how vulnerable you are. You tell all your stories, talk about all the things that have happened to get you to where you are now. So I just appreciate that so much. So let's start with, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and when you were first diagnosed with bipolar disorder?
Sure. I am, 34 years old. I've been married for 10 years. I have an 8-year-old son, and I was diagnosed with bipolar 4 years ago.
Okay.
So I was I was 30, and there were signs and symptoms going back to when I was 12 or 13, but it's one of those things where, it can be hard to piece together.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So you were an adult married.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is bipolar? What's the definition of it?
I would say that it's a mood disorder where you have a difficult time chemically regulating your high highs and your low lows. So there are in-betweens, but I'd say the main, manic and depressive episodes that don't necessarily come on due to an external factor. It's more of an internal chemical thing that is really out of your control.
Yeah, I love that you pointed that out. I feel like this is a term that everybody overuses. Oh, they're bipolar. Oh, they're bipolar. And I love that you point. It's not an external necessarily. It's not situational. It's a chemical imbalance that makes you have the high highs or the low lows. Now, is this hereditary?
Yes, and actually my sister has it as well.
Okay. Was she diagnosed before you or after you, or?
She was diagnosed maybe 7 or 8 years before I was, and she's younger than me too.
Oh, okay.
But it's you, in hindsight, it's like you look back and it's like, how did we not figure this out so much sooner?
Yeah.
But I mean, part of it is like, I didn't want help or think I needed it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. You would think that your sister having it and it being a hereditary type thing that your doctors would have been like, well, this makes sense much earlier, but maybe you didn't go to get the help. Maybe that's what it was.
Well, it's one of those things where, and I think that this is typical for a lot of people. I would go get help for depression.
Okay.
People want help when they're depressed, and antidepressants are very widely available and affordable. And it's like, so I was in this cycle of I would get depressed, take antidepressants, feel better, then feel way better. And, and think of that as being, okay, well, that's my normal, which was actually more like hypomanic to manic, and then crash and repeat the cycle.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Absolutely. Your wife going through all of this, was she like, okay, listen, this is exhausting, this is not normal? Or was she like, okay, this is his baseline? Like, was she totally confused as well, or was she trying to get you to get help?
I think that she was not active. There were a couple times over the years where she was like, okay, something's really off with him, but we never really dove that deep into it. It really things escalated and got to where they are now. I had a psychosis in 2021, which is, really a telltale sign of having bipolar disorder is, if you have one that's not brought on by like it's not substance induced, it was a manic episode that spiraled into psychosis, and then that's kind of what led to the diagnosis and made all the pieces kind of fall into place. Like, oh, that's what's been going on.
Yeah, absolutely. You hate to say it, but it's like, thank goodness that came along to kind of
Yeah. Oh,
even
absolutely.
kill things. So, so you received your diagnosis because we had an episode happen that like kind of catapulted you into that. Tell us about that episode. What actually happened that made y'all think, all right, time to get some help?
Well, I was having a lot of the psychotic symptoms, a lot of paranoia, delusions, not sleeping, erratic behavior and talking. And honestly, it's kind of interesting looking back because I felt, and this is very common, people feel like they're on like a special mission during psychosis episodes, and so I was like working on all of my things, but I was very secretive about it because I thought I was under surveillance all the time, and I thought that I needed to actively act normal a lot. So really, to other people even close to me, they kind of didn't know what was going on,
Wow.
but it's like my wife said, if she would have come into my office at any point, she would have been like, because I had like newspapers everywhere and like old photo albums and the classic like board with the red string
Yeah.
here to there. But anyways, it all culminated to one day. My son broke out in a rash, and we took him to the ER, and my mind had been racing about that I was going to get abducted and have experiments done on me and things like that. And when we were in the waiting room, I got a nosebleed, and I thought that somebody back there has caused this, and they're about to detain me and take me in. And I started hallucinating at that point and audibly hearing somebody telling me to run. So I literally took off running from the hospital, and we lived close to it. But my wife immediately called 911 because a lot of things clicked to her in that moment. And I had been, this is kind of funny, like in my paranoid state, I had been wearing clothes under my clothes at all times for a moment like this, where I need to
Yeah.
take off running and quickly
This
change
is it.
clothes
This
so
is
that
the
they can, yeah,
time.
I was ready for the moment. So, they can't ID me, as the white male in the gray shirt because now I'm wearing something else. So I take off my clothes, I throw my shoes, so I'm running barefoot in my new clothes. I head towards my neighborhood, I scale a fence and jump into these people's backyard. And just to give a little insight into, how I'm extremely panicked.
Now, a quick shout out to our sponsors.
If you're looking to buy or sell, I have the perfect realty company for you. Clark & Co. Realty is located in the Benton, Bryant, Arkansas area, and they understand that buying or selling a home is more than just a transaction. It's a life-changing experience. That's why their team of highly seasoned real estate professionals is dedicated to providing exceptional, personalized services for all their clients. They truly take great pride in the relationships they build, and they always work relentlessly on the client's behalf to help them achieve their perfect real estate goals. They always have the client in mind, and I can speak firsthand when I say how reliable, trustworthy, and quick they were. When I was looking to buy my first home, they were there with me every step of the way, answering every question I could think of. They showed me a great amount of knowledge and patience through the process. It's no wonder they've won so many awards for their outstanding services and their excellent relationships with clients. So if you're looking to buy or sell, there is no better option than Clark & Co. Realty.
I'm having a million thoughts run through my head, most of which are totally illogical. And it's almost like you're in a dream. It's like
Sure.
you come across things and that reshapes what you think is happening. So I climb this fence, I'm in these people's backyard, and I think, okay, well, this is terrifying. I need to travel backwards in time. So what I did then is I went over and I had been practicing this a lot is doing backflips because I thought that somehow that was connected to time travel. So I did a backflip into these people's pool. And then I got out. I was like, well, that didn't work. But then I looked and I was like, okay, well, this is a safe house. This is like, you're a secret agent and your team has put this house here in place for you to go in and hide in. So I walked right up to the back door, soaking wet, and walked right in. The door was unlocked. And, honestly, thankfully, somebody was home.
Yeah,
It
right.
was a teenager, and he was like, "You need to get out. I'm calling the police." And that really spooked me. But if nobody was there, I might have like sat down and like got in bed or ate their food. I don't know.
Yeah.
So then I was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry." And then I took off running, and this is in my neighborhood. And at this point, the police are looking for me because my wife has called them, and now they've been called here. So they're like driving around my neighborhood. I'm running barefoot. I make it back to my house, but all the doors are locked and I don't have keys or anything. Um, and so I come into my backyard and I'm trying to climb up the side of my house to get to where I had left a window open upstairs, but it's not happening. And so I go into we have like a three-season room out back, and I go in there and there's a rug with a couch, and I get under the rug up against the wall, and I'm like, okay, they'll never find me here.
Yeah.
I'm just going to wait until they leave and then I'll go back out. I actually thought I needed to go to the sewer system and that like my next phase of my mission was going to be in there. And the police were going through my backyard. People are calling for me. I'm waiting it out. And they actually start to leave. Like that, I had successfully hid. And my dad was actually already on his way to meet me when this all is happening. We were going to be going to a high school football game. So he and my wife has called him, and he came into my house. He had a key. And when I heard him inside, I got up and then he unlocked the back door and I went in. And I actually didn't recognize him. I thought he was like an imposter.
Oh,
And
no.
this part's kind of intense, but I spit in his face and said, "You're not my dad." And I'll never forget he like grabbed me by the shoulders, not like in a I'm going to take you down, more
Sure.
like I want to hug you so badly, but I don't want to startle you. And he looked right at me and he said, "You're going to have to trust me like you've never trusted me before." And and I did, and it really settled me down. And we walked outside, and it's interesting how things just progress. Because then at that point, the police are out there, and I started thinking, okay, part of my plot is that I get arrested. That's supposed to happen in the mission, so you should go with them. And the police officers they were fantastic. They were very calming, and they were like, "Hey, do you understand that you need to come with us?" And I was like, "Yes." And so they cuffed me and loaded me into the car in front of my house. And of course, at this point, like all my neighbors are outside.
Yeah,
So
of course. Yeah. That,
yeah,
especially the
so really,
teenagers, like, oh God.
yeah, really spectacular moment being soaking wet, being loaded into a police car. But they took me to the hospital. The family, they didn't want to press charges. They talked with the police and with my dad and my wife, and that the household didn't want to press charges. So they actually took me to the hospital instead, and I was evaluated, and I went home with my parents that night. And it was immediate bipolar
Yeah.
diagnosis, like on the spot. And I got on antipsychotics that night. And it took a few days. I was kind of in and out of reality for a little while. Like I would be back and I would know something had like big had happened, and that it was not real, but then I would kind of slip back in to different racing thoughts, and it took a little while, but it was one of those things where it was like when the diagnosis came, it was like, oh, everything in hindsight makes sense now.
Yeah.
Uh,
Man. Wow. What an evening. Holy moly.
yeah, it was pretty wild.
Was your wife, I'm sure y'all discussed it, but being at the hospital with your son for something and then you running off, was she like, okay, now I see the big picture, or was she just totally dumbfounded by what happened?
I think it was a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think she also started thinking like, you know what? Now that I really think about it, he hasn't been sleeping a lot. That was the thing. Is
True.
I'm not
Yeah.
sleeping. I would be up all night doing my research.
Yeah.
And, but I already like, I get up much earlier than her and always have, but I was like, I didn't need any sleep. So I would like
Yeah.
come to bed for a little bit and I lay there and then get back up. But she also, I'm the stay-at-home parent, and so
Yeah.
she was, was working 9 to 5, and my son was at school during the day, and it was like a lot of this was like happening with nobody around.
True. Yeah.
So there weren't that many people that would have been able to really see everything that was happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got several friends and acquaintances that have had a bipolar disorder given to them or diagnosis given to them. And something that I hear frequently, but it goes along with schizophrenia as well, but they get this, it's almost like God has sent them a mission or they feel like they are God. Do you feel like that's something pretty common as well?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's very common, and it comes in all different shapes and sizes too.
Yeah.
Like there was I told my wife at one point that I was Jesus,
Yeah.
but then I backtracked and talked my way out of it and was like, well, that's not really what I meant because she made me go get a psych eval after I said that, and I
Yeah.
was able to explain, which happened really. Things like that had happened that were mania related. And since I didn't think anything was wrong, and I would just stay really calm and I would basically talk my way out of situations where there were red flags.
Holy moly. Yeah, that seems to be a super common something I hear pretty frequently. It's like, I don't even know what you would call it, but they either feel like God has given them a mission and they are on the specific mission for God, or they feel like they themselves are Jesus coming back to help save people. That seems to be a common story. So you keep talking about the episodes. So kind of tell us the difference between a manic episode and a depressive episode in your own experience.
So yeah, so the manic episode is very much euphoric and it's gradual too. So you
Okay.
go through a phase where you feel really good, really energized, and generally to those around you, you'll seem like you're doing great and like
Yeah.
you're really sharp, you're on top of everything, you've got all this energy. And then that begins to turn into more and more reckless behavior. And that comes in a lot of shapes and sizes. For me, a couple of them were like erratic spending. Like I'm like a super cheap person. Like
Yeah.
it drives my wife crazy. But buying things that we couldn't afford, giving money away. That's another big thing.
Okay.
Like unnecessary, irresponsible generosity is very common for people that are manic. Increased promiscuity, and yeah, it just generally you burn bridges maybe, but it just spirals into where you really have little to no control. And it
Yeah.
doesn't always turn into a psychosis. A lot of the time it just then peters out and then you become very depressed.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you feel very, very eccentric and energized and intelligent and charismatic. And also with that, a lot of time you start missing social cues. Like, for me, like standing too close to people when I talk or dominating a conversation, things like that.
Yeah. So you get like just overexcited, the euphoric, like, okay, I feel great.
Yeah, basically.
That
But
would be hard. Like that would be
it,
hard to recognize like something's wrong. You feel great.
oh yeah, yeah. I had a manic episode when I was in my mid 20s where I was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm gonna play in the NFL." I haven't
Yeah.
played football since high school, and it was like, "Well, that's what's gonna happen. I have the energy to do it, so let's go."
Yeah. Heck yeah. And nobody could stop you. Yeah. And then you hit that depressive episode, and that's where it's like not just sad, but it's like a deep depression. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, and you can generally feel it coming. I always think of it like, you're flying and then you feel the holes in your parachute, and depression usually,
Yeah.
even when you don't know that you've been having mania, and then generally with that, there's a lot of embarrassing reflection on the manic state and being like, why was I like that? And when you don't know what was happening, it's very hard to process. Like, gosh,
Interesting.
that was out of character for me or whatever. But it's really the opposite. It's no energy,
Yeah.
feeling hopeless as opposed to full of hope. just feeling very gray. And it's not always, it's not sad like crying sad, but
Right.
it's like, despair.
Yeah, that's a great way to word it. I love the way you word that. Like looking back, that was out of character for me. How strange.
Yeah.
Like that wild. Okay, I'm loving this by the way. I appreciate you joining me. I'm learning so much. I'm learning so much. So, okay, what does a typical day look like for you when you're feeling stable? So, you kind of talked about it earlier. You're a stay-at-home dad.
So yeah, so I get up early. I work out and I lift weights and then I run before my son gets up.
Okay.
So I get up, I get him ready for school, get him out the door, then, do during the days, managing his schedule, running whatever errands, doing whatever needs to be done around the house,
Yeah.
laundry, cleaning, taking care of the dog. And then he comes home from school, and then later my wife gets home from work, and it's, spending time with them, taking a lot of medication. I
Yeah.
take 6 meds a day, one in the morning and then 5 at night.
Okay.
And I'm very regimented. Like my morning routine is identical every day, down to the minute. I go to bed pretty early too, and I have like a very regimented like way that I space out the medications I take at what time, and then like no screens after a certain period, be sitting, no more walking around, and then eventually getting in bed. Because with mania, I struggled with insomnia for so long, and it was like nothing helped.
Yeah.
No amount of a sedative could put me to sleep, even when I wanted to. So
Yeah.
sleep stability is really important for me for regulating mood, and that's also like one of the signs that we look out for
Okay.
is as far as like could a manic episode be coming on, is if all of a sudden I start acting, I stop wanting to sleep as much as I do. That's like a tell for us.
Okay.
And then there are other things too, but I check in regularly with a psychiatrist. After the psychotic break, I was in therapy once or twice a week for a couple of years. Now it's more just periodic, but yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's a lot of it comes down to just discipline, and I'm very routine oriented, and that is what really helps with stability for me.
Yeah. So, h- how would you recognize now that you kind of know what's going on that something may be coming on? You feel like your regimen kind of gets off a little bit, your sleep routine gets off a little bit. Like, can you
I would
feel
say
it
this.
coming?
Well, I will say since then, I have not really had the manic tendencies. And
Okay.
I think that part of that is because medically, it is easier to treat mania than depression.
Oh, okay.
And that's especially with bipolar disorder, you generally cannot take regular antidepressants because they will make you manic.
Okay.
So a
Wow.
lot of the time, the difficulty is finding something that brings, doesn't let you get too high, but also keeps you above getting too low. So there are bipolar antidepressants, but they're not SSRIs like your typical, Zoloft or something
Yeah.
like that.
Okay.
Um, and they're not quite as effective, I would say. But so there are things that we look out for. So like as far as mania, sleep irregularity would be one, but also I become like very emotionally raw in the more manic states, whereas I'm generally a lot more reserved. But I'd be watching like you ever see the Sing movies?
Of
Sing?
course. Yeah.
Okay, I like saw Sing 2
Are
in
you like
theater.
bawling?
Oh my goodness, like the whole time in Sing 2 in the movie theater. And like other people were like, what is wrong with this old
He's
man?
just in touch with his emotional side.
Yeah, that's
That's
that's an example I always think of, is
interesting.
like seeing that movie in theaters and like weeping,
Yeah.
like very out of character.
Yeah.
But also,
What's crazy is the things you mention, you would never know. Like, if you were crying, I'd be like, oh, he's just a really sensitive guy.
right, but when at the midline, that's not really what I'm
Yeah.
normal like. But yeah, and then part of it is being open to input from my wife, because
Right.
one of the things with mania is that it can be really difficult to recognize in yourself, and it's easier the more experience you have and the more that you've seen it and are now aware of what's happening. But being open to input from her, like, hey, like last week you were pretty charged up. Like, are you was that just a result of circumstance, or do you think that's a chemical thing? Like, um, things like that. And then with depression, it's a little different because I mean, I can tell like the medication works to a degree, but sometimes I will become more physically depressed than
Yeah.
like emotionally. Like I can just feel like if I was on no medication, I would be very depressed right now.
Yeah.
Um, and it's more, the physical, things feeling heavier, the air feels thicker. But not, not to the degree where you can't, I've had so many depressive episodes where it's like you can't get out of bed.
Yeah.
Um, so it is just easier to recognize, and I feel the depression more over the past few years than the mania. I haven't had anything like totally debilitating, but it is just easier to recognize, and you're just going to be way more open to like admitting and accepting help. This is for just for anybody.
Yeah. You kind of set your pride to the side.
Yeah.
Yeah, for your family and yourself. You just kind of got to bite the bullet and be like, okay. So, do you feel like, speaking of family and relationships, do you feel like it has affected family relationships, jobs?
I would say that in some ways, it really has not had any negative effects.
Okay.
It actually has helped, I think, other people understand me better and
Yeah.
past behaviors in the same way that it's helped me understand myself better.
Yeah.
Um, and part of it too is we went through all of this with my sister, 7, 8 years before, and so it was like I had also seen her be so successful afterwards. I think one of the hardest things for people with accepting a diagnosis like bipolar is they feel like it's just, you're gonna fail now. Like
Yeah.
there's no succeeding with bipolar. Everything is um and it's just not true. And that's one thing is like the way that it's always, been, it's so outdated how it's like portrayed in movies or TV
Yes.
or whatever, and inaccurate too. And people just associate that, oh my goodness, am I going to be like that the rest of my life? And it's so much more treatable than people tend to think. And I had the secondhand experience of watching my sister be so successful afterwards that to me it was like, oh, okay, life's going to be easier now than it was before
Yeah.
getting medicated. Whereas for a lot of people, it's just the terror of the diagnosis is very preventative.
Yeah. Oh man, that's amazing. I love that you pointed that out because, like I said, I have a lot of friendships and acquaintances that talk about bipolar. They feel like they may have it, they're not sure, and everybody's just terrified. It comes with such a stigma, just like anything else mental health related. So I love that you pointed that out, and it makes so much sense. Like, things can be easier because you have an answer now and you have medications and therapy to help you through it. And speaking of that, what kind of therapy do you feel like worked best for you?
I mean, I think that a huge part was, especially after the psychosis, was just processing what happened.
Yeah.
And it's hard going through the manic phase where you're fully on top of the world. And a couple other delusions I had. I thought like my eye was going to grow back. I lost my eye to cancer when I was a child, and one of the delusions I had was that it was going to grow back any day. It was just going to
Mm.
pop out and be there. And so going from a world where you think that things like that are about to happen, and like I also thought that nothing was ever going to be hard again for the rest of my life. Like I've
Yeah.
passed all my tests in my
Yeah.
mission. Now everything's going to be easy forever. And then recalibrating to a world where none of that's true and
Yeah.
you feel super depressed. Like that was very difficult. And even with like the medication, I would say I healed chemically faster than I did emotionally
Well, that's a good
from
way to put
that.
it. Yeah.
Like I started becoming balanced out, but just like the trauma of what happened and processing everything, it took months. Even with accepting diagnosis and wanting to move forward, just like, the what the heck just happened, it takes a really long time to wear off, which is something that I've seen a lot of people talk about, like on TikTok. I that's what a place where I've found just a lot of connection with other people that have bipolar disorder and very similar experiences. It's
Yeah.
been
Yeah. I imagine the past Even like the kid, you walked in his house soaking wet. I imagine for you later processing, it's shame and guilt and embarrassment and all these things. Did you find yourself like once you got an answer, did you go back to them and be like, hey, listen, this is what happened? Like, do you go back and try to mend ties with people?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of those things where I keep a pretty small circle, so
Yeah.
everybody that I care to know
Heck
knows,
yeah.
and I
Sure.
don't really look back and think I need to explain myself to anybody. Like
Sure.
people can think whatever they want to think, but it may or may not be accurate, but that really isn't worth me investing in emotionally as far as what other people think about things that have happened. So
Yeah.
it's not like something I mean, I'm very open about it, but it's not something I've like, well, it's funny, of course, on TikTok, I was just going to say, not something I've really broadcasted, but
And you're,
TikTok life, my
yeah.
TikTok life and real life have like no
Yeah.
connection. Like, I don't
Sure.
know. I don't know. I know like 1 to 3 people in real life from TikTok.
Yeah.
If people come across it and they'll be like, I have had friends come across and be like, I didn't know any of this.
Really.
And, and it's like, oh, well, that's nice. Well, now you
Yeah.
do.
Now you do. Now I know a little bit about it. Yeah. I didn't know if you felt like you were saying, you carry all this stuff, like trying to process it. I didn't know if you felt that need, like that, I've got to go back and tell everybody why that happened. It's nice to know you don't feel that obligation. Like my family knows, and we move forward from here. I am curious, you were saying looking back, like, oh, this makes sense. What was like thinking back to young Wes? What was one of the first things you remember that you're like, that was probably related to bipolar?
Well, I started having pretty severe depression when I was 12.
Yeah.
And then I would, but I started realizing after a few years that there was like this bounce back, right?
Yeah.
And it was like not bouncing back to normal, but I'm going to feel great in a couple months. And I would know it was coming. And I would generally start just acting really recklessly, like doing dangerous things. And that's kind of some of the first things I can look back and think, when I'm 14, 15, doing dangerous or really irresponsible things
Yeah.
that I wouldn't normally do. But yeah, and also just like periods of being like extremely extroverted or overly social and outgoing, when I was in high school, when I'm pretty introverted. But getting just that change in character that looking back is like, okay, that makes a whole lot more sense. Well, I went through a season of being super talkative.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that makes total sense. So you were talking about TikTok has been a huge like support for you. Do you feel like that's where you found the most knowledge about bipolar, like where you find answers to things, where you relate to people? Do you feel like that's been your biggest support?
it certainly has been a support, but I think that honestly, a lot of it just comes from watching my sister having gone through it
Yeah.
and beside her. We're very close, and I mean now she lives less than 5 minutes away,
Oh, that's great.
and it's like I knew a lot but didn't know it applied to me because when she was going through it, there was a lot of research that I was doing, and then even especially after I was diagnosed, it was like she had a lot of advice for me about
Yeah.
how to move forward. So I would
Wow.
say that really she has been my biggest resource.
Yeah, I bet so. No, you said that it was like 7 or 8 years before, but is she much younger?
She's 3 years younger than me.
Okay, so not too bad.
She was diagnosed. Well, she had a psychosis when she was 18,
Yeah.
and she kind of fought the diagnosis for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Okay. Man, I bet y'all grew way closer when you both got that
Yeah,
diagnosis.
yeah,
Yeah.
we've always been very close, but it was like that's kind of something that we have where we can really relate.
Absolutely. Man, what a blessing to have somebody so near and dear that you can say, hey, listen, I have this struggle. Nobody else really understands, but I know you kind of can at a different level.
Yeah.
Man, that is, I cannot thank you enough for hopping on here, answering some questions for us. Like I said, it seems like something that I hear all the time. There's so many people that either think they have it or do have it, and they just still have so many questions. So, where can they find you on socials where you get on and explain kind of what you've gone through?
I am only on TikTok.
Okay. Yeah. What's your TikTok handle for them?
It's at West Profile.
Okay.
It's Wes's profile.
I gotta ask, what made you want to hop on TikTok? You said you kind of keep to yourself. What made you want to hop on there and be like, okay, here's my story?
I think part of it was so my sister, again, she's a TikToker much more so than I am. And she kind of explained to me how it worked. And she was like, it'd be a good creative outlet for you.
Yeah.
And you don't have to show it to anybody you know.
Yeah. Good for her. She sounds like an awesome, awesome person.
Yeah. Yeah, she really is.
I love it. Very cool. Wes, thank you so much for joining us. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Townsend.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Okay, listeners, you know how this works. So Wes and I are going to keep chatting. We got a few more personal questions for my patrons only. If you want to hear those and you want to help support this project, hop on patreon.com/TownsendTmusic. And then, of course, you can always watch these interviews with all my guests on YouTube at TownsendTmusic YouTube. But if not, we'll catch you next time.
If you'd like to hear the rest of this interview, visit patreon.com/TownsendTmusic. And don't forget, you can also watch the interviews on our YouTube channel at TownsendTmusic YouTube.